Okay, so have you ever stopped to think about the true cost of war?
I mean, beyond the obvious tragedy and loss of life.
Yeah, Sun Tzu lays out this scenario in The Art of War where you've got this massive army,
100,000 men.
right? 100,000 men, and just to maintain that force day to day,
You're looking at 1,000 ounces of silver.
every single
And
day.
that's not even considering the years it could drag on.
The battles, the sieges, the just pure stalemate.
Fortunes could be completely wiped out.
And then he throws in this almost casual comparison. All of that staggering expenditure
Versus a mere 100 ounces of silver.
spent on spies.
It makes you really pause and think.
It does. In such a high-stakes game where resources are constantly being drained, what's the truly smart investment for a leader?
It's like Sun Tzu is reframing the whole idea of cost. He's not just talking about money. He's talking about the cost of uncertainty, the cost of not having the right information.
Yeah, and how that can lead to these prolonged conflicts that bleed you dry.
Exactly. That small investment in spies could actually be the key to preventing much, much larger losses down the line.
So that's what we're going to deep dive into today. We're going to be exploring Sun Tzu's insights on the use of spies.
Specifically, we'll be drawing from Chapter 13 of The Art of War.
And for all of you listening, whether you're in the business world or just trying to understand global events,
Or even if you're just fascinated by this kind of timeless strategic thinking.
our goal is to break down Sun Tzu's ideas on espionage, make them clear, memorable, and most importantly,
Relevant to your life.
because, as we'll see, this isn't just some ancient military manual. The principles here can be applied in so many different contexts,
It's about understanding the power of information.
and how that can give you a real edge in any kind of competitive environment.
One of the first things Sun Tzu establishes is this idea of foreknowledge.
He says a wise leader achieves victory through foreknowledge,
Right, but then he goes on to clarify what he means by that.
because it's not about some kind of magical intuition.
It's not something you just get from the spirits, or just from looking at patterns.
He specifically says, knowledge of the enemy's dispositions can only be obtained from other men.
This is where the spies come in.
Right, and he's not just talking about spies in a general sense. He breaks it down into these 5 distinct categories.
5 classes of spies.
Exactly. So let's go through them one by one. First, we have local spies. What are those all about?
Well, Sun Tzu defines them as employing the services of the inhabitants of a district.
Okay, so these are people who are already embedded in the enemy's territory.
Right. They know the terrain, they know the customs, they might even have insights into the enemy's movements.
It's almost like having these built-in sensors that are already part of the environment.
And if you think about it in a modern context, it's not just about physical terrain anymore. It's about understanding the local market, the local culture, if you're trying to do business in a new place.
So those are your local spies. Next up, we have inward spies.
These are the ones that are really interesting. Sun Tzu describes them as making use of officials of the enemy.
So these are people who are actually part of the enemy's structure.
Exactly. They could be officials who are dissatisfied. Maybe they're open to bribery. Or maybe they have their own agenda
But they're in a position to provide really valuable information.
about the enemy's plans, their weaknesses, their internal divisions.
Now, in a business context, this could be like someone who's working for your competitor.
Someone who's willing to share insights about their strategy or their upcoming product launch.
Okay, so we've got local spies, we've got inward spies. Now, for the most crucial category, according to Sun Tzu himself, converted spies.
This is where it gets really strategic. Converted spies are getting hold of the enemy's spies and using them for our own purposes.
So you're not just neutralizing the enemy's intelligence effort,
You're turning them around,
taking their own spies and using them against them.
essentially creating double agents.
It's a pretty brilliant move if you can pull it off.
It's all about taking control of the information flow.
All right, so those are converted spies. Next, we have doomed spies. What's going on with those?
Doomed spies are all about deception. Sun Tzu talks about doing certain things ostensibly for purposes of deception and allowing our own spies to know of them beforehand
So you're intentionally leaking false information.
through channels that you know the enemy is monitoring.
And the doomed part is that these spies are essentially expendable.
They're sacrificed as part of a larger misinformation campaign,
It kind of reminds me of those honeypots that they use in cybersecurity.
where they set up these fake systems to lure in hackers.
And then they can track their movements and learn their tactics.
Exactly, it's about manipulating the enemy's perception of reality.
Okay, so that's doomed spies. Finally, we have surviving spies. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, these are the ones who go behind enemy lines.
Gather information firsthand and then make it back alive.
They're the ones who bring back the direct reports of what's actually happening.
So we have these 5 different types of spies, but Sun Tzu doesn't see them as operating in isolation.
He emphasizes the importance of using them in conjunction with one another,
He even calls it divine manipulation of the threads.
because each piece of information that you gather from these different sources
It's like a thread
and the skilled leader weaves those threads together
to create this complete tapestry of knowledge.
to see the bigger picture that the enemy can't see.
And this interconnectedness makes the whole intelligence network much more robust and difficult to penetrate.
Exactly.
So you understand the different types of spies, but Sun Tzu also goes into detail about the qualities that are needed to manage them effectively.
He starts with intuitive sagacity,
Okay, so this is about having that natural shrewdness.
that ability to understand people and situations.
To kind of see beneath the surface and make judgments about who to trust and how to approach them.
Yeah, it's not just about following a set of rules.
It's about having that gut feeling, that intuition that guides your decisions.
And then he adds something that might seem a little surprising in the context of espionage: benevolence and straightforwardness.
It does seem counterintuitive at first. You'd think that deception would be paramount in this world.
But Sun Tzu is emphasizing the importance of building trust, especially with those spies who are closest to you, like the inward spies and the converted spies.
You need to maintain those relationships over the long term.
And you can't do that if you're constantly lying and manipulating them.
So it's about finding that balance between cunning and honesty.
It's about creating a sense of loyalty even in this clandestine environment.
And the third quality that he mentions is subtle ingenuity of mind.
This is about being able to analyze information critically, to separate fact from fiction,
To see through the deceptions that the enemy might be trying to throw at you.
and to piece together a coherent narrative from all those different threads of intelligence.
So it's a combination of analytical skills, interpersonal skills, and just plain old common sense.
Yeah, and then he gives this very direct instruction: be subtle, be subtle, and use your spies for every kind of business.
This is interesting because he's saying that spying shouldn't just be reserved for military matters.
It should be an ongoing process.
Something that informs all your decisions, whether they're related to war or business or anything else.
It's about constantly gathering information and using it to your advantage.
Okay, so you've got your spies in place, you're managing them effectively, but how do you actually treat them?
Sun Tzu is very clear on this point. He says that with none in the whole army are more intimate relations to be maintained than with spies.
Intimate relations, that's pretty strong language.
It really emphasizes the level of trust that needs to be there.
Because you're relying on these people for information that could be absolutely critical to your success.
You're entrusting them with your secrets, your plans, your vulnerabilities.
And how about rewards? How generously should spies be compensated?
Sun Tzu says none should be more liberally rewarded.
Makes sense. You're asking them to take huge risks.
They could be captured, they could be killed.
So the rewards need to reflect that.
They need to be incentivized to stay loyal and to continue providing valuable information.
And then there's the issue of secrecy.
This is absolutely paramount. Sun Tzu says, in no other business should greater secrecy be preserved.
Because if your intelligence network is compromised,
It's game over.
the enemy will know your every move, and they'll be able to counter you at every turn.
And he makes the consequences of leaking information very clear. He says, if a secret piece of news is divulged by a spy before the time is ripe, he must be put to death together with the man to whom the secret was told.
Wow, death for both the spy and the recipient. That's how seriously he takes the need for confidentiality.
It's not just about protecting the information itself,
It's also about maintaining the integrity of the entire network.
because if people start talking...
The whole system falls apart.
Now, one of the things that Sun Tzu emphasizes is that the information you're gathering should be very specific.
It's not just about knowing where the enemy's troops are or what their general plans are.
He says, whether the object be to crush an army, to storm a city, or to assassinate an individual, it is always necessary to begin by finding out the names of the attendants, the aides de camp, doorkeepers, and sentries of the general in command.
Okay, attendants, doorkeepers. Why are those details so important?
It's about understanding the human network around the enemy leader,
The people who have access to him, the people who influence him,
because those are the people you can target.
either to gather more information or to sow discord.
or even to turn them against their own leader.
So it's not just about military strategy.
It's about social engineering
It's about understanding the psychology of the people involved.
and how to manipulate them to your advantage.
Now, what happens when the enemy tries to use spies against you?
Sun Tzu advocates for a very proactive approach to counterespionage.
He says, the enemy's spies who have come to spy on us must be sought out, tempted with bribes, led astray, and entrapped.
You don't just want to stop.
You want to turn them,
Recruit them to your side.
use their information against their former masters.
And this is where the converted spies become even more crucial
Because they're the ones who can identify enemy spies.
and help you turn them to your side.
Sun Tzu says that it is through the information brought by the converted spy that we are able to acquire and employ local and inward spies.
And he goes on to say that it is owing to his information again that we can cause the doomed spy to carry false tidings.
So the converted spy is like the linchpin of the whole intelligence network.
They're the ones who make everything else work.
And Sun Tzu reiterates this point by saying, the end and aim of spying in all its 5 varieties is knowledge of the enemy, and this knowledge can only be derived in the first instance from the converted spy.
That's why he says, hence it is essential that converted spies be treated with the utmost liberality,
You have to reward them generously to keep them loyal.
because they are the key to everything.
Now, to really hammer home his point, Sun Tzu gives us some historical examples,
He talks about the rise of the Yin dynasty,
which was due to a man named Ai Qi.
who had served under the previous dynasty, the Shi,
So he was essentially an inward spy.
who helps bring down the old regime,
And then there's the rise of the Chao dynasty,
which was orchestrated by Liu Ya.
who had served under the Yin dynasty. So again, an inward spy playing a pivotal role in a major power shift.
These examples show that Sun Tzu's principles aren't just theoretical.
They're based on real historical events.
They've been proven to work time and time again.
And Sun Tzu concludes this chapter with a powerful statement about the importance of spies.
He says, hence, it is only the enlightened ruler and the wise general who will use the highest intelligence of the army for purposes of spying, and thereby they achieve great results.
He's saying that effective espionage is a hallmark of true leadership.
It's what separates the winners from the losers.
And he goes even further. Spies are a most important element in war because on them depends an army's ability to move.
He's making the point that without good intelligence, you're essentially blind.
You can't make informed decisions.
You can't plan your movements.
You're just stumbling around in the dark.
So to sum up for you, the listener, what we've learned today.
Sun Tzu is making a very compelling argument for the importance of foreknowledge in any kind of conflict or competition.
Whether it's actual warfare or business or even just your personal life.
He outlines 5 distinct categories of spies.
And he emphasizes the importance of using them in a coordinated and strategic way.
He talks about the qualities that are needed to manage spies effectively.
And the need for trust, generosity, and secrecy.
And he concludes by saying that a well-functioning intelligence network is absolutely essential for success.
It's what allows you to see the battlefield clearly.
To anticipate your opponent's moves.
And to make the right decisions at the right time.
Now, as we think about how these ancient principles apply to our modern world, it's fascinating to consider the ways in which information is gathered and used today.
We have so many tools at our disposal, from social media to data analytics to artificial intelligence.
And the amount of information that's available to us is just overwhelming.
But it's not just about having access to information.
It's about being able to filter through all the noise.
You identify the signals that are actually meaningful.
To separate fact from fiction.
And to make sense of it all.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder.
Yes.
In this age of information overload, how can you develop your own intuitive sagacity and subtle ingenuity of mind?
How can you cut through the clutter and find the insights that will really help you succeed?
Can you draw inspiration from Sun Tzu's wisdom and learn to see the world through the eyes of a spy?
It's a skill that can be incredibly valuable in any field.
Whether you're running a business, navigating a complex political landscape, or just trying to make the best decisions in your personal life.
It's about being aware of the information that's out there.
And knowing how to use it to your advantage.
It's about being a strategic thinker.
And never underestimating the power of knowledge.